diabetes, heart disease, cancer, things like Alzheimer's.
We've got to ask ourselves what we need to do to make that happen. And that's what this entire program was designed to do, to become the most healthy and most exuberant, most vibrant that you can possibly be.
All right, so we obviously mentioned AMPK, and that was part 2 of the podcast series. These are all very interrelated. So mTOR and AMPK, there has to be a certain balance between these two. mTOR being the negative, we want less of that. AMPK being the positive, and we want more of that. So in the AMPK podcast, you discussed how AMPK provides youthful expression of cells, provides proper balance of energy in cells. Explain this a little more. What is AMPK's role, and how does it provide youthful expression? How does it give us a proper balance of energy in our cells?
Well, it's a signaling compound, and while I'll try to give you as much information as I'm personally acquainted with, be known that there's far more known about AMPK than I'm about to relate, and quite frankly, we're in our infancy and understanding a great deal about what it can do. It's concerned with glucose management. It's concerned with energy. Let's put it in its simplest terms so that we don't complicate matters. As we pointed out, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the body's only energy supply. Mm-hmm. You don't burn any other kind. Even I don't care if you're burning it out of fat, sugar, any of these macro molecules that you're taking in for nutrition are going to go downstream, going to be broken up and they're going to be turned into nutrients that are ultimately going to make their way into the ATP process.
Okay.
So you're going to end up making ATP in your mitochondria so that you can live. A cell that cannot produce ATP cannot live. Every cell, all 60 trillion of your cells, every single day in their mitochondria are taking ATP apart so that you can live and breathe and go on and wake up tomorrow and do this all over again. In all of the years that we live, regardless of whether they're 100 or 50 or anywhere in between or whatever, those years were dedicated to a 24/7 turnover of ATP.
Okay.
Now, that being said, I think you'll see that it's fairly vital.
Sure.
Okay. Well, there's a process that one's cellular components go through to arrive at ATP, and that is taking AMP, adenosine, being an amino acid, adenosine taking a phosphate ion and attaching to it is adenosine monophosphate, mono being one, adenosine monophosphate. Adenosine is capable of attaching to another phosphate ion, and that would be adenosine di, or 2-di, diphosphate, 2 phosphate ions attached to that adenosine. As we go up with the number of ions of phosphate attaching to adenosine, we become less stable. It becomes more energetic. The molecule does. And when we get to the third molecule, or third ion of phosphate attaching to this adenosine, we have adenosine triphosphate, which is a highly unstable molecule in the human body. And it is the molecule that the mitochondria uses as furnaces inside your cellular nucleus to tear apart to get the energy that it needs to pump your daily activity. From there, everything in your cell, including those little receptors on the cellular membrane that actually we've discovered now vibrate. And with life's energy, they vibrate. And they've got to find something that comes into them and vibrates the same way in order for them to allow that thing into the cell. So all of your cellular processes, including the millions of receptors on each cell, vibrate some special frequency for whatever they're looking for to signal them. All of this is dependent upon ATP and this process of taking AMP to ADP to ATP. And then once it tears that ATP off, that third phosphate ion, it either the third or the third and the second, depending on how deep it goes into it, it is produced again another molecule of AMP or ADP. Again, then looking through nutritive sources to resupply another phosphate ion to that so it can go back
and create more energy.
Create more ATP for your mitochondria to use.
Okay, excellent.
And that's how it goes on. And
in this podcast, we mentioned there are studies of AMPK stimulation, and the results are phenomenal, really. In fruit flies, they lived up to a third longer with AMPK stimulation. Patients on metformin, which is a drug for diabetes, patients on metformin lived 15% longer than non-diabetics. So people with diabetes taking this diabetic medication lived 15% longer than people that don't even have diabetes. And that's in metformin being known as an AMPK stimulator. Roundworms lived 20% longer. Mice lived 6% longer and weighed less. So there's a lot of great things that we've seen through these studies of AMPK.
Here I want to interject too, if I could. That's AMPK. AMP we looked at as adenosine monophosphate. AMPK is the kinase, is the enzyme that's responsible for allowing AMP and ADP to gain another phosphate. That's what AMPK does.
Okay.
It is responsible for resupplying that phosphate ion so you can have lots of ATP running through your system. That's one of the reasons that's important. Another reason that that's important is that it's been discovered that when that is high in your system, when you have a lot of AMPK, not only do you get a lot of ATP and consequently a lot of energy at the cellular level, but AMPK as a signaler of its own is capable of downregulating or sending down signals to mTOR. So it takes the system that can be out of regulation and telling your body to do things that are not good for it and are destructive to it and are setting in motion pathways of disease and aging. It can turn that around by telling it to downregulate, slow down, go in the corner, take it easy, level out, let's balance. And then AMPK reestablishes the energy at the cellular level. We're talking about turning things back to where they were when you were in your 20s and 30s. That's the power of reestablishing a balance between AMPK and mTOR. AMPK is not only just vital to resupply energy, but it's absolutely essential to tell mTOR to go sit in a corner and level out and become a balanced expression of what God intended in our DNA.
That's fantastic. Getting down to the cellular level, this is what our cells expect of us. This is what we need to give them. It's completely within our control to give our cells what they need. And in doing so, we're talking about completely eliminating diabetes, cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and a myriad of other diseases.
But indeed, it truly is there. I mean, the DNA is the code. If anybody asks me what I consider health to be, can I define the quality of good health? Good health is the application of the DNA program. If we would obey the code written in our DNA, then our cells would perform according to that code. It's us that absconds with that code. We're the ones that mess it up. We're the ones that refuse to apply ourselves to what the cells ask of us. We get a sense then of ourselves as a whole human being, but then we also get the sense that we are no longer able to, with disregard, do anything that we care to do to ourselves. We now must take a look at what we require to generate that quality of health, that application of the proper DNA code.